These series of videos are a special gift from me to the individuals who struggle to play with helicopters. Topics like helicopters history, Gaijin's history with helicopters, how helicopters work in War Thunder, how helicopters are played in different game modes, and a review of every single helicopter in War Thunder. These special series of videos are a love letter to Gaijin, for shaping my childhood with their incredible piece of art, with the music and the soundtrack that they made, for helping me understand helicopters, and to bring it back with joy and a lot of fun years later.
My first interaction with War Thunder was completely on accident. A half-baked World of Tanks clone, I said. Just being good for its fancy graphics, I cried. As my brother finally got his gaming rig, I took the opportunity and downloaded the game. But when I saw that specific logo, it felt familiar. Way too familiar. And that's where my journey started. For the longest time, I tried to look for a solution to helicopters in War Thunder. For the longest time, I tried to make them fun for everyone. And I wasn't even sure how I would begin. After making helicopter content for over 3 years, I wasn't even certain whether if I should even start. Just getting them out of this miserable place they have been stuck in for so damn long. Sad, terrible, and nothing more than a tool to be used as a cash grab or as a glorified kill streak in ground battles. God, even Gaijin doesn't know what to do with helicopters. But did they? Because long before the surge and rise of War Thunder, the shiny premiums, or even the ground and naval vehicles, there was this one game that stood the time, vastly different compared to any game of its era. In 2010, long before millions of players filled the skies of War Thunder, before Gaijin Entertainment became one of the most recognized names in military gaming, there was another battlefield, forgotten by time. A battlefield fought from behind the armored glass, beneath the spinning rotors, and through the sight of one of the deadliest machines humanity ever created. In the midst of all the chaos that the community is facing, I want to bring you back to that time. A time when Gaijin used to care. A time when Gaijin made a game no one cared about. A childhood game that changed my life for good. In a small development studio founded by two brothers, a vision was taking shape. A project built upon years of aviation experience. A project powered by technology that would later evolve into War Thunder itself. What appeared to be just a helicopter game actually was something far more important. A technological stepping stone. A proving ground, and perhaps the missing link between the studio's early flight simulators the global phenomenon that would follow. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing a game that started it all. A game that planted the seed of my obsession with helicopters. Introducing the Apache Air Assault. But before we do that, we need to know how a small studio like Gaijin made one of the biggest military video games of all time. Founded in 1992 by Russian developer Oleg Maddox, Maddox Games originally focused on MS-DOS and Windows games, including a bunch of 3D shooters and puzzle games like Czar and Stormfighter. But in the late 1990s, they were acquired by 1C Company, and the studio was rebranded as 1C Maddox Games and shifted all of its focus to combat flight simulators, with the first game being the IL-2 Sturmovik. The publisher in the West would be Ubisoft. I swear to God, if anybody calls this prehistoric Hawkstone, I'm gonna have a mental breakdown. To put it lightly, it was a massive success. The details that it had for its time is simply phenomenal, but its incredible physics, damage models, and level of attention to detail was something else. Also, there are some things about this game that I found quite fascinating to this day. First of all, how in God's name is this game still running on my Windows 10 computer? Secondly, oh my God! Look at the controls, man! Did an IO2 veteran design this game? Post-editing Bob Dickinson over here. Now, Oleg Maddox was never an IO2 pilot, but he might as well be one. Of course, Oleg, IO2 series of games, and of course, Maddox games deserve their own video. But as I was finishing the video, I was quite curious to search about Maddox himself. And it turns out that this guy has a background in military design bureaus in Moscow. I may or may not mistake him with somebody else, but apparently, this guy was graduated from Moscow Aviation Institute in 1997 as a radio engineer, working on avionics, radar systems, and flight simulators for military aircraft and late Soviet training simulators. Some resources also claim that some of the programmers of the IO2 game actually came from the Sukhoi Design Bureau, but I'm not too sure about that. But to say that I was genuinely shocked to read all of this information, yeah, it would have been an understatement. Maybe one day I may or may not make a video on the entire IL-2 series, but outside of that, that's very interesting. Back to the video. I will remind you, by the way, that this game was released in 2001. Kind of feels like the old compatibility experience they got from the old Soviet computers also got integrated into this version of the game as well, and pretty much made a software equivalent of the AK-47. I could be wrong, of course, but hey-ho. Anyways, IL-2 becomes very successful. So successful, in fact, that they kept making DLCs, expansion packs, and more versions of the game. But Maddox had a vision beyond any simplified sequel or expansion packs. They wanted to make a second generation to the IL-2 Sturmovik series. Bigger maps, better graphics, a lot better physics, and overall, things that were far beyond anything we had at that time. And so in the middle of 2000s, they started working on the IL-2 Sturmovik Cliffs of Dover. However, this time it took a lot more time than usual. By 2010, the game was already in 5 to 6 years of development. Of course, once you wanted to push the game to release as fast as possible, because the amount of time and resources it was consuming was going very high, and so the developers were forced to release the game in a bad and unfinished state. It was terrible. A game riddled with bugs, performance issues, crashes. A game that tried to be one of the best became the worst. This is most likely one of the first times a company ruined the game due to corporate deadlines, and it will probably not be the last. Oleg Maddox left the studio immediately after its release, and pretty much later retired. The gaming community was furious. Once he moved on and partnered with 77 Studios that was behind the World War I simulator, Rise of Flight, and made the IL-2 Sturmovik Great Battles, Battles of Stalingrad, and further, Battles of series, using a brand new game engine compared to the previous one Maddox used. Currently, their most recent release is the IL-2 Korea. Also, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it already. It really helps the channel and it prevents Stalin to think irrationally. Wasn't cringe enough. Time to invade Poland. Hopes for Cliffs of Dover wasn't over either, however, as the modders and fans of this series gathered together and decided to bring back the game and revive it, under the new designation IL-2 Sturmovik Cliffs of Dover Blitz. Released in 2017, and after years of headache with limited software, legal disputes and free labor, they finally made it. Their name? Team Fusion Simulations. Killed by corporate deadlines, and revived with the passion of its community. It was an interesting story, to say the least. An incredible piece of history, from the late years of the Soviet Union all the way to now. Now you might have asked this question: What in the hell does that have to do with Gaijin and Apache air assault?
Well, you see, my ability to going off tangents is comparable to titans of history like Karl Marx, David from Fortnite, and of course, Laserpig. Hell, I might as well change my name to fucking Laserpig Dickinson if I keep going further. You can see it,
Anyways, where are we? Oh, yeah, incredibly valid question because this is where exactly Gaijin comes to the picture. So the Cliffs of Dover development was taking too long, right? So in the meantime, 1C was also trying to expand the franchise into 7th generation home consoles to pretty much cash in on the massive mainstream gaming boom that was the mid to late 2000s. But you see, IO2 series of games so far have been a PC game since the beginning, mainly because of lots of controls you have to bind to your keyboard, if you haven't realized it already. With the consoles only being limited to this, you can clearly see the problem from continents away. Literally. So they wanted to outsource their franchise to a studio that actually knew how to make games for consoles, and they decided to point their ships towards a small team of developers in Russia. Gaijin Studio. You see, originally established in 2005 and moving its headquarters from Russia to Hungary, Gaijin was a game studio that had a main goal to make games for consoles and computers alike, ranged from this to whatever this is. But one thing they really wanted to get themselves into was military simulator genre, and what could be a better start than the IL-2 Sturmovik series. It's that time of the year again, ladies and gentlemen. Post-editing Bob Dickinson over here. So I realized that Oleg Maddox had this much history behind him, so naturally I decided to do the same thing with the founders of Gaijin, which is Anton and Kirill Yudintsev. And just take a wild guess where they graduated from. Just take a guess. Yep, it was Moscow State University. But this time, Anton graduated from the elite faculty of computational mathematics and cybernetics. Whatever that means. Of course, history of Gaijin, what they made, and how they became one of the biggest gaming companies in Russia, just overall deserve their own video. But this was also quite interesting for me, and I'll definitely make a separate video about this. But either way, just go back to the video. 1C hired Gaijin to build an IO2 Sturmovik game from ground up. The name would be Birds of Prey, but instead of using 1C Maddox Studios' engine and code, Gaijin used their own proprietary engine, which is the Daegor, to run fluently on consoles. Because they were targeting console players using controllers rather than fight sticks or keyboards, Gaijin intentionally simplified the difficulty to control the flight models, giving a lighter, less punishable experience to console players and those that wanted to enter the flight simulator genre. Maddox games had virtually nothing to do with the development of the Birds of Prey. They acted purely as historical and technical consultants, putting their name to the box art to give the console spin-off immediate credibility. And it did quite incredible. Reviews were quite positive and overall the work was well polished.
Unlike nowadays.
Yes, it wasn't as close of a simulator as the IL-2 series. The IL-2 community was also kind of divided on it as well, saying that it was something between an arcade and simulator game, between fight sim players who loved the depth and general gamers who found it too difficult. Not gonna lie, playing it on PC actually sucks though. I mean, kinda similar to the current debate DCS players have versus War Thunder air sim players, like literally. But Birds of Prey was something different. Controls were simplified, it had its own soundtrack, its own story, and just overall, you know, what War Thunder used to have before shit hit the fan. Or propellers in this case. A little while later, Gaijin decided to release a PC port called Wings of Prey. While 1C Game Studio and Maddox Games retained the hardcore simulation crown, their decision to outsource Birds of Prey to Gaijin accidentally handed the exact structural blueprints and the taste of success Gaijin needed to build one of the most profitable military video games in modern history. So once the entire Birds of Prey project was done, Gaijin realized that they accidentally built something so unique that they really didn't need the IL-2 Sturmovik title. So they decided to break free from 1C's oversight, partnered up with Konami, which made these video games, and made another one. So usually it takes years to develop a video game, ranging from model to level design, source codes, game engine licensing, UI design, AI source code, and etc. And since Gaijin already had most of the work done by themselves during the Birds of Prey development, they just simply copied most of their previous work into this game anyway. In order for you to understand what we're dealing with, if you actually play the game on PC, you can literally hear the test drive audio chatter from War Thunder.
Number 3, anything? No, negative, nothing. Roger that!
I will eventually make a video on Wings of Prey too. Anyways, this time the name of their project was Birds of Steel. The name was different enough to not land them in a lawsuit, but similar enough for players and fans to recognize the pattern. At a time when flight simulators were considered a dying genre on home consoles, reviewers praised Gaijin Entertainment for successfully making an authentic simulation work on a gamepad. However, it suffered from a major lack of marketing and terrible retail availability, which kept it from becoming a massive mainstream hit. And that was on purpose. Turns out Birds of Steel was never meant to be just a standard standalone console game. Gaijin was quietly using the game as a fully funded testbed for another MMO online game. Birds of Steel eventually deserves its own video too, but I have to seriously bring back my fucking Xbox because Jesus Christ, it's been broken for a while. But this was something that sparked the core DNA of a weird entity which we now know and love and hate to this day. There are a ton of similarities between War Thunder and the previous games. For example, the loading screen is the same, the HUD has a very simplified layout, maps that are literally imported into the game, and some old models that are still there. You can pretty much see the weird golden lion, and of course the tech tree that feels like a prototype for what War Thunder is going to offer. Jesus Christ, I remember playing this specific campaign mission in War Thunder, and I literally saw it in a video a while ago. You can see 3 difficulty levels here too, just like in War Thunder. This was basically a way to limit the gameplay to be comfortable for casual players that lob missiles all the goddamn time, or made it difficult enough for those that want to roleplay as their grandpa in Pacific Ocean. Or I don't know, Eastern Front, depending on your spawn point, man. Later, the similar control system also welcomed an innovative mouse aiming system in War Thunder, which, fun fact, it was patented by Gaijin in 2014, by the way. Of course, the game was never perfect. In fact, it had plenty of problems. For example, some mainstream gaming outlets complained about the historical accuracy of the missions. Yeah, nothing new. They found it boring to fly for several minutes straight just to reach an enemy fleet. Yeah, also nothing new. While the planes and skyboxes looked gorgeous, critics pointed out that if you flew too close to the ground, islands, trees, and ground military units looked flat, blurry, and dated. Wait until you see the Vietnam map. At first, they wanted to name their game World of Planes. But because Gaijin didn't want their fans to confuse it with an already existing trash, they decided to name it War Thunder. Now, we have already know a lot about War Thunder's prequels and prototypes. IL-2 Birds of Prey, Wings of Prey, Birds of Steel. These are all known amongst the enthusiasts. But what about the Apache Air Assault? The sole reason why I made this video? Well, that has a story of its own. Formed and founded by 4 disgruntled and frustrated Atari programmers, Activision was the world's very first independent, third-party game developer and distributor. Its story is like a roller coaster, becoming incredibly successful, then being forced to shift their focus on computers during the home console game crash of 1983, then branching their name to Mediagenic, that branched into corporate database and business software, resulting in a catastrophic bankruptcy, then coming back even stronger after its survival, acquisitioning studios like Raven Studio, Infinity Ward, and publishing legendary titles like Call of Duty, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Guitar Hero, and many more. But while Activision was publishing masterpieces left or right, there was a division called Activision Value Publishing, or I'm just gonna simply call it AVP for now. While Activision's titans and heavy-hitting games were released at $50 to $40 price tags, AVP published games that were around $10 to $20. Usually with small studios that could make games fast, aiming to be sold in retail chains like Walmart's, Lidl's, Ikea's, and McDonald's, and yeah, other American shopping chains that I don't know about. I'm sorry, man, I'm not American. I just come from a place where McDonald's exists. The games AVP used to publish ranged from this to this. Yeah, but in the midst of all of the masterpieces and worthless garbage, one game decided to stand out from all of them. The AH-64 Apache Air Assault. No, not that one, the 2003 version. Don't get me wrong, it was a good game, but it really didn't become anything massive. It was just something that you would usually get either mentally obsessed with or just never touch it again. The game was made right after the invasion of Afghanistan and right before the invasion of Iraq. Also, I just love how in order to sell it in the European market, they had to change the name from Apache Air Assault to Operation Air Assault, as if Europeans know nothing about the Apache.
Right, what is this name of this helicopter? Is it an apache, is it?
Godverdamme, ik ben een sukkel.
Oh, pissed off, you German femboy. Anyways, what do you think of apache, Mr. Totally Legal Migrant number 371?
رجال الأسود على MBC2.
Ja, perdone, che pide?
Call me Mr. Worldwide Dickinson for a reason. But yeah, it wasn't really anything special. It was just another helicopter game that nowadays people see as nostalgia. But in the late 2000s, Activision saw a vacuum of aircraft simulators, especially helicopter game simulators on consoles and PC market. So Activision wanted to make exactly that. But which game studio can actually pull off a simulator on a console? What game studio can possibly integrate simulator controls on a console and have a competent game engine without making it an absolute headache for the developers and players? Well, you guessed it right. It was the Snail. So they decided to license the various Apache and drone models from Boeing, worked on an absolute legendary soundtrack and storyline, and they released the game in 2010. Before I finish off the video, I wanted to exclusively thank Zoltan Sultan for inspiring me to make this video. A while ago he made this specific video and he went through every single game Gaijin made. When he covered the Apache Air Assault and IO2 Birds of Prey, I was incredibly happy that someone finally recognized Gaijin's helicopter game. Albeit his segment of his video on the Apache Air Assault was relatively short because, well, his game version had quite a bit of problems. This video inspired me to go down and dig even deeper, resulting me to go down in an even deeper rabbit hole. Me and Zoltan have quite a bit of history together, mainly because my grammar sucking ass, but hey, he may not know me that much, but he was one of the first War Thunder content creators I've ever watched and subscribed to. So feel free to subscribe to him and just have a look at his channel. His content is just simply incredible. Now some might say,
Bob, you're glazing him a bit too hard.
listen, if a man deserves glazing, then I'm bisexual Dickinson. Either way, ladies and gentlemen, check out his channel, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, dislike it if you dislike it, and if you want to support my channel even further, you can also join my YouTube membership or leave a super thanks if you want to. For now, this is me, Bob Dickinson, and stay tuned for the next episode, where we have a look at the forgotten Gaijin video game, the Apache Air Assault.